Yesterday morning, a group of 200 Hearthstone players entered the DreamHack Arena with the dream of taking home a piece of a $25,000 prize pool and the title of the inaugural DreamHack Denver Hearthstone Grand Prix champion. Over 9 rounds of grueling Hearthstone Swiss, we finally have our top 16. And bringing you the action from the first match is going to be Noxious, and that's admirable. Guys, it has been an insane tournament so far, and now we have what looks to be one of the best top 16 groups that I have ever seen. Admirable, what do you think about this tournament so far?
It's looking pretty darn stacked. I think that one of the big surprises throughout the weekend was the performance of Warlock and the adaptation of it. It's moved a lot towards an aggressive style, and we'll be seeing that in our first match with Ike versus Astrogation that's taking place. Astrogation is the one who brought the aggressive Warlock. But something else to talk about too is just the performance of Rogue. It's been pulling a lot of bans in this tournament, even though Druid or Priest are thought to be the tier 1 decks. Yeah,
I've been a little bit impressed with the way Rogue and Warlock sort of met each other during the tournament. It's not really that I didn't expect Rogue to make a showing, but I expected there to be more bans of it. And so I really thought people would end up targeting the Druid and Priest more. It seems to be that there were 2 big schools of thought, which was, target Druid and Priest, and the other school of thought, which was target the Rogue decks and maybe some of the more tempo-oriented ones. The Paladin decks have also been notoriously powerful, I'd say. We have, I think, a few of them in the top 16, and that's one deck that I'd like to see make it through the end.
Yeah, it seems like even though the representation for Paladin has been low, the Paladin decks that we have been seeing have been performing quite well. And we have our top 16 players standing at the ready. So let's take a look at who the lucky 16 are, the talented 16, to make it to the single elimination stage of this tournament. And here they are. Our very first matchup is going to be Ike taking on Astrogation. Then we've got Zephos against Muzzy, Phenom and Hot Meowth, Just Sayin taking on Rosty, Shoop versus MTG Kid, Dr. Jikaninki against Count Waffles, Earl taking on Cap9, QWERTY97 up against Monsanto. We'll be rounding out our top 16. So many familiar names in this player lineup. So many previous DreamHack champions out for blood looking for that repeat performance.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I'm a little bit bummed out that Amnesiac and Shocky, for instance, haven't made it through. But it's they were the favorites going in, but everything really is played prior to that. It's nice to see Dr. J making it again to the top 16. One of the I want to say after his breakout performance has just been dominant in many tournaments, making it very deep despite the size of the field.
To me, a big one to look at is just the Astrogation versus Ike. Ike has been a practice partner with Zalay and that group of players for quite a while now, and he's made some big changes to a lot of the decks, namely Cobalt Scalebane, and his push of that card, his pure faith that he's had in that lone minion. But Astrogation has been in the hunt for these big decider matches for a very long time. He has made it to this stage and this level of the competition very often. The thing that hasn't been happening for Astrogation is getting through that point. That's still a big hunt for him. And against the newcomer Ike, Ike has seemed cool and calm and collected the entire weekend, and I think he had a perfect performance in his matches. Yep. Clean 9-0 throughout. Yeah, Astrogation
historically performs very well in Swiss, but once it gets down to that single elimination portion, he doesn't quite make it to that championship title spot. Ike, however, we know he's a practice partner of Zalay's. We know he's 9-0, undefeated in the Swiss stage of this tournament, but we got a chance to talk to him, learn a little bit more.
My name's Mark Eichner. My battle tag on Hearthstone is Ike. I'm from New York, and I kind of just turned to Hearthstone because I was in a hospital bed a lot when I was younger. So I didn't really have anything to do besides play video games, and I kind of just fell in love with Hearthstone. I have 2 older brothers. One of them plays Hearthstone Arena, and it's terrible. And I offered him help and coaching, but he declined. He doesn't like to associate himself with me now that he knows I'm better. The first team I joined was Gamer Sensei, and I joined about 2 weeks ago. I would never really thought that I would go professional or someone would even want me on a team because I didn't really understand how big esports was until this year. I'm really excited to be on the team, and it's a lot of fun having teammates. So the first step of prepping is finding out what decks that you think are going to be popular and then what decks are going to be good against those. So the first stage is kind of theory crafting where you just hang out with people and just talk about what decks you think are good. And then after that is practice stage. So you make the decks that are popular and you make your lineup and you just grind best of fives until you're confident that you have like a 70% win rate. So I do practice sets with my teammates, I do practice sets with like Crane and Zalay, and we just sit there and try to find the most optimal list of the decks that do well against the common decks. I think the best way to learn is definitely just sharing ideas with people and kind of getting a grasp of what the concept is of the game and how to play it the best that you can.
9-0 record, and what an intelligent player he sounds like. Practice partners with Crane and Zalay, two of the best players in the world. Talks about what it takes to prepare for a tournament, but also talks about how this is his first team that he's ever been on. Gamer Sensei didn't even really think that he would go competitive, go pro in Hearthstone, because he just didn't know what it was about being a professional in esports. But now I think he's quickly figuring it out. He's 9-0, undefeated, the only undefeated in this tournament, and a championship here at DreamHack Denver could ignite his professional career.
The big thing that all the players share in common is the hard work and the practice they put into it. It's the hours and the work are going to yield payoffs if you're doing the work properly, and working with some of the world's best is easily a way to do that. Not everyone has access to a network that way, but the way that they got to that point was, again, just the hard work and the sharing of that information and the constant practice of it. Can you outguess the competition? And then once you're in game, can you outperform them as well?
Yeah, it's also a matter of creating your own practice group as well. We've seen a lot of practice groups sort of emerge over time. There's been, the initial cluster of Hearthstone pros from 2014 going all the way back, but a lot of them have kind of evolved over time, and we've had, I'd say, even more of them, to the point where now everybody's sort of got like this 4 to 5 man practice group, and they all end up sharing deck lists, and sometimes they end up diverging a little bit in terms of lineup building, but they come with a similar strategy, and even though the results may not always line up, one of them oftentimes make it very deep because of that. Yes.
Yeah, when you have multiple players who are all bringing the same idea, the same strategy, you oftentimes see those players finding great success. So Ike, in his first professional foray, has found great success with a 9-0 record, but he's up against no slouch in Astrogation, and let's take a look at these picks and bans and see how this match is going to play out. There's Ike, a player for Gamer Sensei. Gamer Sensei itself having had lots of success in this tournament, also represented by Rosti and Luker. And here we can see these classes. Ike will have the Druid, the Mage, the Priest, and the Rogue will be banned. Astro will have the Paladin, the Rogue, and the Warlock, and the Druid will be banned. So Ike electing to not ban Astrogation's Rogue, even though the Rogue has been one of the most potent classes when it comes to 3-0 sweeps.
There are a couple things to note about the deck list too. Astrogation brought big Druid to this tournament. This is not the standard Jade Druid.
Yeah.
It's like we saw Muzzy in the last round play on stage. It has a lot of power potential, and it's something that I imagine most players weren't prepared for in this tournament. He's also brought the Corpse Taker version of Rogue that has the copy of Stormwatcher at the top end to make sure it has Wind Fury to try to push that giant damage spike. I imagine Ike is probably more prepared for something that is packing a heavier punch and a little bit slower. And then the Paladin that's in Astro's lineup also is Murloc Paladin. That's not running Tyrion, it's running a Lich King in that slot instead. And on Ike's side, Jade Druid, the Burn Mage, and then Highlander Priest. I feel like all of those decks can perform against Rogue. They do a great job at clearing out the board state, especially when the heavy hit comes around that turn 4 mark rather than just trying to get a giant thing on board very quickly and then punish the opponent for it.
Yeah, I think also the lineup that we see from Astrogation, the ban on the Rogue is probably somewhat informed by the Paladin being there. We've spoken a lot about that during the event, but Paladin is one of the decks that needs to find its own spot. So you almost ban for the Paladin while in the meantime opening up a lot of avenues for your other tempo decks to win. So by banning the Rogue deck, you're able to make sure that all those decks don't really run into one huge terrible matchup. Yeah,
both strategies certainly make a lot of sense. Both lineups very well thought out, very thoughtfully crafted. But it is that time again. Admirable, who's it going to be? The undefeated Ike or Astrogation, who has proven time and time again that he has what it takes to be a champion. He just hasn't gotten there yet.
Well, he's not running one of my favorite cards with Tyrion, so that's a strike against him. And Ike, he's got a strike against him, though. He told me he was going to bring 8 Cobalt Scalebanes to the tournament, and he only brought 2.
Oh.
However, I do like how his lineup is lining up against Astrogations. I think that Burn Mage could be a big problem for Astrogation in the series, and so I'm taking Ike.
I'm going to take Astrogation. I'm going to have to be with the other side of the coin, I guess, on that one. So we both have a horse in the race. I think Astrogation's time has come.
I think you're wrong.
Okay.
I think you're wrong.
Well, so be it.
What do you think?
I think it's time to get into this match. It's going to be Ike versus Astrogation, the first of our top 16 matches right now.
At last, we're onwards to the top 16. First match coming right up with Admirable. Very comfortably resting on my shoulder. I like this. This is actually quite nice. It helps me keep my posture right.
You notice I just...
Oh, I see. Oh, it's a fake
It just works out really well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's advanced tactics. So going back to the lineups, right? Like you think the lineup from Ike is, I guess, better positioned against Astrogations than the other way around?
I definitely think so. If you look at Astrogation's deck lists, the Murloc Paladin, the Rogue, and the Zoo Warlock all thrive off of board position in some way or another. They need to get something on the board, and they need it to stick. But if you look at Ike's deck list with Burn Mage and with the Highlander Priest, those two decks thrive on the fact that they can continuously remove that position from their opponent. The goal for Astrogation is to overload that spot as we get into game number 1 and see what these guys are doing. But overloading that can be very difficult because he's a little bit more heavily seated towards the mid-range with his threats. Again, Corpse Takers, the Rogue, the Zoo Warlock being more focused towards demons and having Blood Reaver Gul'dan at the top end. Those two things, I think, could be the major problems for him.
Yeah, we'll have to see whether or not this lines up a little bit later. The first match we're going to be running up into is going to be Ike on the Jade Druid as well as Astrogation on the Zoo Warlock. So the patches in the opening hand for Astrogation, sure that's bad news, but when he's got the Flame Imp, at least it's a solid minion to start with. Ike's hand, not too much work there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you look at Ike's Druid list, the copy of Medivh in here is meant to fight a lot of times versus Druid decks.
Yeah.
He had to ban Druid in this matchup because Astrogation brought Big Druid. That can be very troublesome for Ike because none of his decks are really built for that one in particular. I think he could struggle a lot against it. He's missing the ramp here. He doesn't have anything to follow up on this Jade Idol. So the thing he's got working for him is that Astrogation has drawn patches in this spot. Both of them have drawn a big tech card that they don't want to draw this early. So who comes in on top?
Yeah, Astrogation going to open up with the Blood Cell Corsair here, just trying to make sure that if the Druid is forced to hero power, at least it's not the Flame Imp that gets taken out in the process. So he loses the least powerful threat that he's got available, and then is going to be able to refuel. It's sort of a playing around Wild Growth in a very odd way. Not that you'd end up, playing around it very effectively, but it worked out.
He wants to keep his coin. Yep. He knows he's going to lose pretty much whatever minion he plays. Why not lose the Blood Cell Corsair instead of the Flame Imp?
Yeah. Yeah, and the Zoo's power really comes in these early turns where it's able, I'd say turns 1 through 5 are when they get to solidify their board state. And if Druid hasn't been able to shake them off by then, it's very difficult for them to come back in.
Yeah, and this is where this draw was so important for Ike. He really needed to draw either Wild Growth or a Jade Blossom or a Mire Keeper, I think, to have a very strong chance in this one. The weakness of Druid right now is the early game. That's really where the cracks show. Because of that, Astrogation is looking to getting a lot of damage during that stage. His hand doesn't give him too much freedom when he sees turn 1 Jade Idol and then he sees the Jade Blossom on turn 3. So he's got his work cut out for him to find that endgame spot where he lands a big Bone Mare and can crank out damage from that. And that's really been the focus of a lot of the aggressive decks that we've seen, is they've gone away from this all-in early style of play and moved much more towards stick a threat, punish the opponent.
Yeah, I feel like it's really due to Bone Mare being in the metagame. Cobalt, Scalebane, Bittertide, Hydra, those cards reward you for waiting a little bit longer before, packing a punch. And this is sort of how Zoo was built, really. It polarizes its mana curve, going all the way up to the Blood Reaver Gul'dan in many cases, as well as including a lot of 1s and 3s since the 2-card slot is occupied by Keleseth.
Sort of the clever inclusion to me in the Zoo decks is Blood Imp. Blood Imp services a lot in the early game fights when you're just going 1-for-1 on your opponent, a lot of 1-2s in the format and that sort of thing. But it also is a minion that will very often stick to the board when you come to a Bone Mare turn. It's a very easy way to ensure that you have something there that can receive that buff.
Yeah,
his hand is getting really rough for Astrogation.
Yeah, we talked about sticking a Bone Mare on something that's on the board at the time. Everything he draws is off curve, off tempo, not quite at the right time. And while he's got the 1/1s coming in, that Doomguard risks discarding what I think could be it's usually the game ender for Zoo decks.
The big one for me is like, where does he get a board? He's doing nothing this turn. He's got to worry about Spreading Plague. I mean, turn 6, the last thing you'd want to do is have just 2 1/1s out going into that turn. He's got to worry about fighting Jade Behemoth off adequately in this spot. His hands are very tied, and he's just going to have to take risks for pretty much the entirety of the game, I think, if he's really going to get there.
It's a very interesting point about the spreading play, because there's an argument to be made for keeping patches for when you play South Sea Deckhand, even though you push, South Sea Captain, sorry. You push less damage, but at least spreading play does not punish you. Oh, wow.
Well,
this is the best or the worst.
You know, second Doomguard I don't think is actually that bad here, because now he knows where his game plan is headed. It's going to be heavy things, unless he just discards Doomguard and Bone Mare.
Yeah.
But now, if he plays Doomguard, he's going to have a pretty good chance to have either a Doomguard or a Bone Mare to follow this up. Frankly, Astrogation is not going to have the liberty of taking this to the long game. This gives him a more clear path of where his hand's going to go.
Yeah, there was probably in his mind an argument for playing the South Sea Captain afterwards with Soulfire, but now that the second Doomguard showed up, I'm not sure how appealing that line of play remains.
He may still go that way too. If he goes with Captain and Soulfire, still gets a reasonable amount of power on board, and then he's going to have a Doomguard and a Bone Mare, or a pair of Doomguards. A pair of Doomguards clearly the one he doesn't want.
Keeps the Bone Mare, does not get the extra body, and the extra body really was crucial for him to get that guaranteed Bone Mare value, at least potentially.
It's also big info for Ike, though. He now knows that second Doomguard is not happening.
Yep. This is Ike's big shot. I mean, the Jades are already 4/4s. Aya Blackpaw coming down. This is not where you want to be drawing your Blood Imps.
I think this is going to just about wrap things up. Astrogation's early draw, he just was missing so much. There's so much in the early game that could really get on board, and he just happened to draw a lot of his heavy stuff from turn 4 through turn 6.
So Blood Imp will stick around, more likely than not, right? So there's a chance that the Blood Imp and the Soulfire, not discarding Bone Mare, can make him at least get that 5/5 on board. And if Blood Reaver Gul'dan makes its way in the hand early enough, let's say, then maybe there's some replenishment that can give him some game.
Well, he's just going to be in a lot of pressure. So he basically has to try and race down Ike, which means that Soulfire is, I think, off the menu on this turn.
Interesting.
I think he loads up his damage, lands the Bone Mare, hopes that he can follow up. And that's exactly what he's going to do. Drops Ike to 16, and he's got 8 in hand. So he needs to find 8 more damage from this deck.
There is another Soulfire. There's another Soulfire. You must assume that there's no armor gain, which is something of a very... I guess it's just a bad assumption to make. There's going to be armor gain in that deck. That's just what it does.
That's a lot of big green men.
Yeah, very large.
This draw looked fairly troublesome from Ike's perspective, but he just drew heat afterwards. And a lot of times just Jade stuff in a row that'll do that, but a quick 1-0 lead for Ike as Astrogation's Warlock is now knocked out of contention. Last year standing, you keep the deck you win with, and the deck that loses, it's the sidelines.
Yeah, and this Zoo deck's also particularly good against everything Ike kind of brought to the table here. So this is arguably one of the stronger decks, I think, in Astrogation's lineup. The other ones mimic the strategy in many ways, where they're all about taking the board and keeping it and snowballing out of control. So there's still a very easy way for him with Paladin, for instance, to take this, or with the remaining Rogue deck.
Yeah, all of his classes are fairly aggressively oriented, and I do think that spells some trouble for Ike in some spots, but Astrogation going for more of that top end, he was looking for people to play, I think, just a little bit slower than how Ike has brought his deck to this tournament. And if you look at Ike's Druid deck, I mean, it is quite literally just the Medivh that's teched into that top end. He does have Forgotten King, he of course has got the 2 Ultimate Manifestations, but he's got a Mind Control tech in there. He's playing the double Mark of the Lotus. He's just trying to get on board as quickly as possible and disrupt those early synergies. This game, he may have his work cut out for him. This is a pretty good looking opener from Astrogation.
Yeah, Astrogation's just got the potential double 1-drop Insanity. I mean, he's just got it, and then can follow it up if he wants. And there's always the Vilefin alone on turn 1. That's extremely powerful. But there's an argument to be made for just starting with the double Murloc if you think you need to fill up the curve afterwards.
Yeah, I like the Vilefin first because this isn't really going to be paid attention to by Ike. He's pretty much has to ignore this. A Wrath here, I think, would be somewhat of a disaster. But from Ike's perspective, maybe he feels that Rockpool Hunter's too powerful or is going to deliver too much damage. This gives Astrogation the ability to really start overloading the removal from Ike by playing 2 Murlocs on his second turn. That's going to open up War Leader value for him, and that's where that starts. If he can keep that pressure high throughout there, he's going to be miles ahead. And Ike does go with the Wrath here, so his thinking is, I think Rockpool's going to be too good. I think if Astrogation follows up with 2 Murlocs, I'm going to need to kill one with hero power afterwards. Really interesting play from Ike.
Fully well knows that. I mean, most of the time here, if the Murloc lives, there's a coin War Leader possibility, and he can then Wrath it, but that means he doesn't get to really use his ramp if he finds it off the draw. So that would sort of delay everything by 1 turn for the rest of the game. Whereas in this case, maybe freeze it up.
It's a very fair point. Playing to the cards that you could possibly draw, looking at Ike's hand, it's pretty darn heavy.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, if I draw Wild Growth, if I draw Jade Blossom, I need to play those cards right away. I better just Wrath or I'm not going to have time to do it later.
Yeah. Astrogation now is going to go for the double Murloc. Now, there's I would say the best Murloc card in the deck, right? I think this is what the glue that holds the deck together would be this Rockpool Hunter in many ways. It makes those 1-drops powerful in a way that they weren't prior to this.
Certainly one of the strongest cards that fights for board. No question about that in terms of stat-wise. And Astrogation, now with this board, Ike's looking back going, man,
I don't know,
really
man.
wish I had that Wrath.
Should have kept it. Kill the 1/3. To be fair, though, in
It'd be
another
underheat
universe,
either way.
yeah, I was gonna say in another universe, that Rockpool comes down on a 2/4, and then the same disaster sort of occurs over 2 turns, and you're in a bad spot regardless. So this is sort of a lose-lose situation for Ike, who just didn't find the ramp, and cannot really. He just can't fight off these Murlocs easily. That's the power of the Murloc deck when it hits the curve.
Yeah, Ike's next draw needs to be something very strong, or he's quickly going to fall out of this game. Either removal, some sort of ramp. I can't really think of much else that's going to make a difference in that spot. And there's a lot of cards that don't make a difference.
Yeah,
2 Ultimate Infestations, the Forgotten King, there's Medivh, there's 2 Jade Behemoths, I have Blackpaw, 2 Spreading Plague, 2 Nourish.
Yeah.
That's half the deck.
Half the deck is dead. He's been drawing fairly poorly, so we can let's just tilt him in his favor just a little bit here. Let's go. It's 60% likely to draw something useful. Let's be nice. But yeah, this isn't working out for Ike at all. And this, again, Paladin just preys on these openers.
Oh yeah.
The odds that they get these 1-drops online is extremely high, especially the list that run the Grimscale Chum, and as a result of that are even faster than their counterparts. It's
And Astrogation's going to pay big heed to that Chum as well. He wants the War Leader to get that extra value. He says, you know what? I got the Rallying Blade online for tempo. This helps me get through Jade Spirit or Jade Blossom. Those are 2 of the cards I think that are in the forefront of Astrogation's mind. Second Jade Behemoth for Ike.
Yeah.
And he is in a world of trouble now.
Yeah, going back to the turn for Astrogation, I mean, not playing the War Leader or the Chum played around Swipe beautifully. He realized the biggest problem I can run into here is Swipe, and if I play the War Leader and I trade the 1/1 away into the little 2/1, then I end up in a spot where Swipe is devastating.
Well,
almost can't afford it.
That is 2 Bone Mares for Astrogation now, so unless he's picking up something, this really is his push. And Ike approaching the Nourish turn, I just don't think is going to have enough time to get through this. So the Chum plus the War Leader, I mean, that's 6 power alone, and then the War Leader buff is 6 power across that board. The 2 Murlocs are going to buff the Tide Color up by 2 more.
4/4, so
That's a lot of instant damage that he's netting in addition to this.
that's a nice 1-drop you got there.
I'm thinking Ike probably needs exactly Swipe or Mind Control Tech.
Yeah. I mean, well, Mind Control Tech helps with the Murloc War Leader, and you have to hit the right target, but you're still dead. I'm not...
If he stole away the 7/3, and he hero powers a 4/1, yeah, he's dead.
He's still dead.
Astrogation even going to play to the chance that he draws another weapon.
Yeah. Why not? That's your push. Swipe is the only card.
Classic.
Oh, 4 of a kind. I like those 6s.
The old 36 mana hand on turn 5. None of them make an impact. Astrogation quickly tying it up. And this is what his lineup is meant to do. Punish slow starts immediately.
Yes. And I really don't think that there's anything particularly wrong about that strategy coming in the tournament, given how well it's paid off for the people that have tried it. The strategy, it's just there's 2 approaches. Either this extremely quick approach or the much slower one with Big Priest, Big Druid. We're trying to target the, I want to say, original winners of the metagame in Razaka's Priest and Jade Druid. So both strategies isolate them in a way. And I'd venture to say this one is less prone to hectic draws.
And Ike's got Priest on deck to handle this. Astrogation's opener here. I'm really curious if it's ever worth keeping Gentle Megasaur. I've just seen this card do so much work against Priest, but it's vital that you have something to lead into it. Now, don't always get that early stuff to lead into it, and sometimes you even get punished because you have that early stuff, but he'd much rather draw those cards now than later, and Chum Rockpool Hunter is certainly one of the 1-2 punches that gets this job done. There is a lot of gas early in Astrogation's hand. He's going to put Ike to an immediate threat check.
Yeah, and the crazy part about Astrogation's hand is that usually Murloc decks seem to be very vulnerable to Potion of Madness early on. Some shenanigans can transpire there, but the Chum plus the Rock Pool are actually both dodging it because they're both becoming 3-attack minions, thus dodging the most efficient anti-aggro tool in the Priest arsenal.
Ike does have Kazakus.
Yikes.
Wild Pyromancer, if he draws just a couple more cheap spells, that might be able to get him back online. But with Astrogation having the Blessing of Kings, he is not shy when it comes to aggression.
Yeah, Ike would have to pick up something like a Holy Smite to really counter this early board once it comes up. Because Astrogation's got follow-ups in the deck, plenty of them coming up. It's more likely Astrogation picks up a follow-up than Ike picks up exactly the answer.
I think Ike's thinking about coining out this Radiant Elemental.
With the Wild Pyro, the coin sort of goes up in value, right?
Oh my.
Can't blame him.
If Astrogation draws anything he can play on turn 3.
I'll take a Rallying Blade. That's okay too.
That's one of his best ones.
Can't argue with that.
Yikes.
Yikes. Was that intended?
Oh, here you go. Just a Radiant Element. Just go ahead and kill this for free.
Well, he set it at 2 health, right? If he takes the value trade, Ike is setting up a very nice Pyromancer with 2 potential spells.
That's where his direction is certainly headed, but I don't know if Astrogation bites on that exactly. Like, from Astrogation's perspective, he's like, why on earth would he play Radiant Elemental?
He just needs something. He needs a body to soak up this board, weaken it and soften it, maybe for a Blood Mage Thanos Spirit Lash. There's a few combination of cards, but I think with Wild Pyromancer, you know, as a very obvious threat now present in most Priest decks,
it is really hard not to make that
Yeah.
exact attack. I think he sacrifices too much by doing it. He's putting Ike on having exactly something that can affect the board, which right now is a 2-card combination.
Yeah, most of them end up being 2-card combinations. Without this coin, it might be a very different story because Wild Pyromancer becomes weaker in many ways. Ike having that coin gets to dictate the way the trades will happen here. And that means there will not be a Blessing of Kings target if the board is cleared up this turn by Ike. If he opts for the very all-in, I want to say, just play 2 spells just to clear.
Yeah, the problem with that play, it's exactly that. It feels really bad. It leaves him without coin, leaves him without the pint size to combo with the Shadow Word Horror later on, and it also just gives initiative right back over to Astrogation. So I think his hands are somewhat tied with this play. I like the Glimmer Root personally. I think that his major spike is going to come with Kazakus, but this is what Blessing of Kings is in here for, and Gentle Megasaur for that matter, is to try to take advantage of the fact that your opponent's having that slow, impending spot coming in. Make your minions outside of the range of that.
Yeah, and Astrogation now facing the decision of getting an extra body on the board or buffing one of them.
Oh, yeah.
You're better off with the preemptive...
Whoa.
Well, so here's the deal. Do you expect those Murlocs to die?
Yes.
Okay. Then we're going in.
Boom. 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 Down to 11.
There aren't too many cards in Ike's deck that can clear this up, but that's one of them. That's a welcome sight.
Wow, that actually would allow him to keep the Curious Glimmer Root online as well.
Yes.
Oh, we may have a game here, Noxious.
Well, he might choose to sacrifice it if he wants to preserve a spell or two, but I don't see what that would accomplish. Fair enough. So he's going to leave one of these Murlocs up?
Nice coining.
Okay.
This coin and heal. Keep the Wild Pyro around as well.
Yeah. He values the Wild Pyromancer's potential added triggers.
Whoa.
Well, that seems like a slight misstep.
That does feel like a misstep to me.
Yes.
I mean, Ike is now losing to the card that he championed for, the card that he really put forward as one of the strongest ones there. The Cobalt Scalebane right now is unchecked. If he used the pint-sized potion, right now he's got nothing to couple that in his hand. It would have done the exact same job as the Holy Smite, but then he would have the attack with Wild Pyromancer, play the Holy Smite, and either Priest of the Feast or Kazakus to supplement that. I think that this was potentially a big misstep from Ike.
Yeah, I mean, this is sacrificing a minion unnecessarily in this spot, and this can cost a lot. I mean, he got 2 damage to face. I don't think that's going to be impactful at all during the course of the game. It might be, but...
The benefit is that he holds on to Pint-Sized Potion, but look at the hand. I think that Pint-Sized Potion is very much outweighed by the benefit of Smite in this spot. It's right in Astrogation's turn 5. This is the play that you expect him to make on curve.
Yeah, but he could have smitten the 5-4, I think, right? It's oh, that's a draw Ike needed most desperately.
And he's now starting to really recover this. Astrogation still got 2 more big hits coming.
Pyro is still checking the 1-1s with additional spells coming in any time. So there are 2 different turn 7 plays for Astrogation. 1 death has been played.
This is where Astrogation starts to get a little bit nervous. Like, hey, wait a second. Are you going to blow up everything in a row into Shadow Reaper Anduin? Astrogation needs to be getting payoffs from these threats that he's playing. And the Wild Pyromancer clearing out the board. This is how Priest is built to work, whether it's Shadowward Harbor, whether it's Blood Mage and Spirit Lash, whether it's Wild Pyromancer and a bunch of weird spells. All those things matter. And now Ike picks up the Shadowward Harbor to couple with Pint-Sized Potion. So he has a lot of gas left in the tank here to fight against this. He's already got Anduin ready.
That's the way to answer.
Binds damage
to the 5-5. So he has been able to check every threat since the early game. I don't know about that, Admirable. How do you recover from that if you're Astrogation? How do you feel?
Well, this is not going to feel good. This is going to feel really rough.
Okay.
And summon a friendly minion.
Please
Mind
no.
you, they changed the way this order of operations worked with a recent patch. When you play a spell, it checks the current board state, hand, and deck for anything that would activate in that spot. And since that potion snapshots the board with no Wild Pyromancer, when it resummons Wild Pyromancer, it no longer damages what's left in play. That is an actual significant difference right here. Namely, for all these reasons, Noble Sacrifice now doesn't threaten the Kazakus that's on board.
Yeah.
The Wild Pyromancer can live through a hero power attack. That's
little things.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, they end up. That changes a lot of the dynamics, you could say, of the resummoning. I wonder how big of an impact it had, because it had an impact here, but in broader boards, it's even more impactful. You used to be able to resurrect Wild Pyromancer voluntarily to get out of a sticky situation.
Ike checks for Noble Sac.
Not there.
Now he knows it's either Redemption, Repentance, or Getaway Kodo.
And that's bringing back the little Murloc.
And this was a great sequence from Astrogation. Ike, I think, took that turn a bit quickly. I think maybe he could have been a bit stronger versus the range of secrets had he just taken his time there. But Astrogation finally getting to a turn where maybe he can pay something off. Or maybe Ike did this intentionally to try to get Astrogation to commit a Bone Mare, commit a Blessing of Kings, then follow up with the Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Yeah, he's got the answer to a Bone Mare, and that's ideally where you want to be getting it, is as early as possible when it has 2 targets and you have a board. If you have a board at the point where the Shadow Reaper comes down, you're in a much better spot.
If I'm in Astrogation spot, I gotta wonder, do I win the game more often by going for a big Finja play, or do I win the game more often by hoping that Ike does not have an answer to this style of board? Frankly, I think it's this one. Even though the Finja looks super appealing with Bone Mare and with Blessing of Kings in hand, I think if he gets Shadow Reaper right here, Raz is not online yet. So then the Finja comes down and it accomplishes the exact same goal. It still gets to fight back from this spot.
There's
it's
no
just
healing.
now much more difficult.
Yeah, it's a little bit slower, but it also doesn't get met with an endless healing from Ike. So in some respects, it's got more potential where you're almost guaranteed to get the damage online. The big issue, I'd say, is that Priest of the Feast is replacing the hero power that was just lost, playing around Shadowward Horror.
This is very wise as well.
Yes.
This keeps it out of range of even the pint size with the Shadowward Harbor. And that's exactly what Astrogation was looking at. How can I maximize my value from this Finja? Brilliantly played.
Yeah, and Astrogation just put the Finja out of range of that. And so Ike finds himself with a stealthed Murloc that will bring out more of them with a War Leader as well.
However,
Follow up.
Ike's starting to beat down the door.
What do you want? This is what Shadow Form does.
Well, this is a bit more than what Shadow Form does.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm with you.
It's what a really good Shadow Form does. Oh, interesting.
That actually is potentially significant.
It might.
I don't think Ike gets there. I'm sorry. I don't think Astrogation gets there just because he's so low on life.
Yes.
At this point, but if Ike just had like a couple less threats to really stick to this board position, that Cold Light Seer could have played a big role.
Yeah, that's really the big difference here, is that Ike has enough mana to where he can ping repeatedly every turn, and he's got enough damage on the board that he can also do the same thing.
Yeah, that's game. Astrogation has no way to defend in this spot.
Precisely.
And Ike just, the damage on board plus the hero power, any spell for less than 7 mana is going to kill Astrogation this turn.
Yeah, there's very little he can do, but he's got to commit anyway, because playing it slowly is no longer on the book. Not something you can do. A 2 mana for 2 damage when you're at 9. There's no healing in the deck. I don't think he runs the True Silver Champion. Funny how that happened. Rallying Blade sort of taking its place over time.
3 mana.
Yeah.
Mana matters. Now, Fiery War Axe, that card's awful. You can't play that card at 3 mana.
No, you can't.
Yeah. Rallying Blade's fine, though. I mean, I usually hold it for Tyrion, but Astrogation doesn't have Tyrion in the deck. He's replaced that with Lich King, so...
It's just a Fire War Axe.
Can't hold it for Tyrion. There's actually no Divine Shields in his entire deck.
Well, there's the Corpse Taker, isn't it? Oh, no, that's not the same list. That's right. He's not putting it in here.
He's running no Divine Shields there.
Ike not playing it.
2-1 lead as he disrupts the early board from Astrogation.
But there's a Rogue in Astrogation's back pocket.
And the Rogue services a lot better in this Priest matchup that Ike has brought than it typically does. He's got the Vicious Fledglings in there. He's got, again, the Corpse Takers to try to nail that Wind Fury buff and then punish Ike super hard when he can't deal with it. Argent Commanders are there. The Cobalt Scalebands are still there. And as weird as it sounds, Stormwatcher's actually a pretty darn good minion against Priest at the top end. 8 health is a lot to deal with. Yeah,
there's one of the quirks as well of the deck is that because it plays the expected Prince Keleseth, there are worlds where you're able to get Prince Keleseth on 2, and then you find a 4/4 Corpse Taker, and that takes you all the way against Priest.
That's certainly a hard one to answer.
Yeah.
That's why the Pint-Sized Shadow Word Horror combo is just so important to where Priest's at. I mean, prior to that being there, it had some really difficult times answering particular types of minions. That 1-2 punch, though, you take a few hits here and there, eventually you land it, and it can just be game swinging. Astrogation draws Prince Keleseth.
The question is, do you coin it out? Because coining it out lets you dagger up on 2 and then play naturally into your 3, 4.
I'm curious where the timing for it really sits, actually, because his hand is stacked. He kept Corpse Taker, he kept Shaku, so his game plan was to get a value minion online, then play a threat. That Keleseth being there really changes a lot of dynamics.
Thanks for burning me, Light.
Some showmanship from Ike there. But there's no Leroy Jenkins in this deck from Astrogation. There's no Shadow Step in this deck from Astrogation. He has 2 Backstab, 2 Cold Blood. The rest of it is minions.
Yeah, I'd like to really emphasize that point because we've seen a lot of Leroy Jenkins during the tournament. A lot of them ended up trading. So when you realize how often your Leroy trades, you realize how often it's just a worse Argent Commander.
It really is an interesting dynamic to put together here. The Rogue deck has turned into this weird mid-range value style deck where having access to burst Leroy damage is not nearly as important as getting priority threats on board. If you threat check your opponent every single turn, eventually they stumble. And that's what this deck is thriving on.
That's what he's doing right now. I mean, get a 4/4 Edwin, get the 3/3 Vicious Fledgling. Those are threat checks one after the other, and they're demanding specific answers from a deck that has a bunch of one-ofs. They have redundancy, but they usually cost a lot of mana to get on. And so these minions are likely to stick.
Yeah, the whole deck is built to function as just a very consistent engine.
Yeah. Respecting that Vicious Fledgling with the silence here. Better now than when it can't be targeted by spells and hero powers. Now, Corpse Taker, another huge threat could come out.
Yeah, and the answer from Ike also gives Astrogation a pretty solid read of what's going on with Ike's hand. In this spot, I imagine he likely wants to set up the Keleseth and get some clear size, land the Corpse Taker moving into a potential Dragonfire Potion turn. If there's no minions on Ike's side, which is sort of the ideal situation with Dragonfire Potion, the Corpse Taker ends up living through that and then threatens a lot of damage. I could totally see Astrogation going for the Keleseth and just a dagger here.
I like the dagger, you're right.
Just, again, to try to land that Corpse Taker at the right moment. You don't want to just play it and try to beat your opponent down. Sometimes you have to do that. It's the timing of these styles of threats that really make the difference.
Vilespine Slayer not so useful in the matchup until the later stages of the game to deal with Priest of the Feast without wasting too much damage. So it's not a card that's of prime importance here for Astrogation. I'm not...
That means trade, I think?
No, I think
wow, he's going to give the Divine Shield. So he's just saying that he wants the damage right away before the Dragonfire Potion hits. I'm very interested by that.
I think the notion is that if he can just put, this is like his first wave of threats. You could view it that way. His refill would include a value card.
Oh
with
boy,
Shaku.
That is a
That's
huge draw for Ike.
Oh goodness.
Now again, Astrogation's got a lot of backup to this.
You know,
That was a big hit.
I noticed something. Astrogation's reaction was extremely different from his other ones. He blinked for longer than a half second. It was a long blink.
The hold your eyes shut real quickly blink,
He
like
long blinked.
like whoa.
He long blinked it. I saw it, Admirable. I was there when he long blinked.
Yep, seeing patches right away.
You got to start pushing, and if there is another board clear, then at least you have another refill with the double pirate as well as Shaku. So there is still, you know, there's a lot of steam still in Astrogation's hand.
This is a really tough spot for Astro now because Ike doesn't have to Dragonfire Potion this board. It's just really not as threatening as it could be. So now you're looking at Raza, you're looking at the Priest of the Feast plus the Glock Crawler.
Another good draw.
Being counters to this. He's got so many ways to fight against this that by the time Astrogation gets back on board, he's just going to have spent so much that I'm not entirely sure where he finds his way back into this. Once he sees the Akanai Circle of Healing, he's relying on Dragonfire Potion not being there to really be the big hit.
No, I think Astrogation is offering trades in a weird way, right? He's getting himself the best trades that he can, putting down the Pirates as the last standalone Pirate synergy left in the deck, and is going to aim for that Bone Mare plus Shaku a bit later in the game. And that's an extremely powerful line. Assuming there's no Shadow Reaper Anduin to meet with it, it gets you usually about 11 to 15 damage.
Yeah.
Solid.
This is a considerable amount of damage that Astro can potentially land this turn.
Oh, that's the second one.
And that'll likely be Bone Mare,
yeah.
I think.
This will precipitate the rush.
Nice.
Well, we're going into turn 8, so...
That's a fine trade. Yeah. That's actually a really good trade. Also.
Fair enough.
But now, Dragonfire Potion doesn't full clear. The buff from Keleseth is keeping Bone Mare out of that range.
Talk about...
So the Smite in Ike's hand
might have to come out. Yeah, there's no way you can afford holding back here, right? This is not a board you let keep going.
Is there like a weird Velen Smite turn that he could get in this spot?
I mean, he could take 10 damage afterwards if he wanted. I mean, he'd have to trade Raza away. Man, Astrogation's been coming back on this board despite the board clear that occurred. The second board clear comes in, uses the Holy Smite, but guess what? Astrogation still has the initiative. And he's got a really strong combination of cards to make that initiative happen with.
This was a fairly strong turn from Ike still, but
Sure.
you have to think about how much he gave up to really make that happen. Raza was sacrificed on board. The Dragonfire Potion caught minions that had already gotten value from this. Astrogation's not trying to burn down Ike. He's trying to stick a threat and punish.
Yeah.
This is the fourth wave that's come out now?
This is about the fourth refill of Astrogation, and probably, I'm going to guess, the last.
He's still got Bone Mare Vile Spine.
Yeah, but it seems to me like this is going to be the last refill after this end. There's not much card draw.
Oh, boy.
Oh, snap. Well, there's no Shadow Word Pain potential. Shadow Word Horror doesn't have the mana to play it. Oh, snap. Well, that's useless. Thanks, Keleseth.
Well, I mean, this is a 7/7 now. Servitude, maybe services something. And right now, Astrogation can't actually combo the Vile Spine Slayer. He needs to pick up something. Almost every single card in his deck will activate it. But
yeah, I wonder if there was an argument to keep the Tar Creeper back for the Vile Spine activator. Because they would activate it here, and Velen could come out. There's a few cards on turn 9 that come out and just jam the board. Never mind that.
But you know, is it Bone Mare or is it Backstab Vile Spine? I'm actually not sure.
I'm partial to the Vile Spine play, but I could see a really good argument in favor of just extracting value. If you want to go for the Bone Mare on Shaku, you probably start with it.
He's got to think about Potion of Madness too. Like now there's Lyra cards plus the natural Potion of Madness in deck. If he Bone Mares up to Shaku, it's vulnerable to Shadow Reaper Anduin. If he Bone Mares up the Tar Creeper, then the Shaku can get stolen away with Potion.
The odds of there being a Shadow Reaper Anduin, extremely slim, as there was a really good time to do it a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Right, on the previous turn.
Potion of Madness is what I'm thinking about here, but Astrogation, he needs to kill this Lyra. He doesn't have the option to Bone Mare unless he was Bone Maring and trading. And that's not really where Astro wants to be.
Here we go.
Well, there is still going to be a Bone Mare target on the following turn if things don't escalate too negatively here. But there is the potion as well as the Shadow Word Pain, the Spirit Lash to keep Astro healed up.
He's got the Eternal Servitude as well, so if he takes the Shaku here and runs it into the Dark Reaper, he can add Shaku to the pool or not on the Eternal Servitude.
First. Get the Lyra back.
I'm guessing Lyra is probably one of his biggest hits.
And there she is.
Priest of the Feast is awfully good as well, though.
For consistency's sake, you may not need Lyra. That is correct. At this point, you've defused most of the threats, but I like the...
I expect a lot of heat.
Yeah.
He's going to pick up a Rogue card as well.
And it is Aya Blackpaw, not the worst you could get. The minion fights for the board, and you know your opponent's deck is full of minions, so... by default, playable. Shadow Word Death, by the way, coming out again. So that's a...
Oh my.
No, that's a turn.
That is
a turn.
That is a super important draw for Astrogation. Gets the Bone Mare. I imagine he's running over the Priest of the Feast in this spot. Poke the damage, and this is the board. This is now what looks like officially the final wave for Astrogation.
Double Spirit Lash. No Thalnos, but still a bit of time. Shadow Word Death can handle the 8/5 that's sitting there. You probably play Velen plus Shadow Word Death and leave it at that.
If Ike plays the Shadow Word Death, that leaves Astro open to buff.
Yes.
The Vicious Fledgling if he has that option. So he's going to choose to fight it on board with Aya Blackpaw instead. This builds a lot of tension on the counter swing. And Astrogation just looking to purely push damage here. Cold Blood looking like a fantastic draw. Backstab fairly weak.
Backstab's not bad. It deals with a part of the board afterwards, right?
I think if Astro drew Cold Blood, he had some times that he delivers lethal in this spot, but comes down to what this pickup is.
Well, Liquid Membrane seems solid enough, but +3 health prevents you from getting blown out.
I like Elf.
With trades, so I'm big partial to the health. So there's the Backstab Shadow Madness turn here that lets you fully clear this board if you'd like to surrender. You also have a 4/7 left, so that's not dying anytime soon. Yeah, this Fledgling's gonna potentially go all the way here.
Yeah, I like the push here from Astro as well. Take care of the 5 power on board.
Yeah, you only lose to what? Dragonfire, Potion, or Mind Control from the Lyra?
Potion's gone at this point.
Sure, but I mean from the Lyra, there's still
yeah.
one spell you haven't seen. It's so fringe that... Ooh.
Is there anything here? No. I don't think there is.
I mean, you can deal 2 damage in AoE, 4 to the Fledgling specifically.
Yeah, he can gain 8 back with the Spirit Lash.
Sure.
But he has to risk his Valen at that point. So for Ike, it's a matter of dealing with the rest of the resources remaining. A very tall order.
Yeah, I like this line of play. Over 2 turns, you clean up the Bone Mare.
I don't like the Wild Power Mane. I think that the Velen is the play here. Take the hit and see if Astrogation wants to trade into this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's the line of play. You basically guarantee that you clean up the Bone Mare over 2 turns. All right, trying to keep that Velen healed up to at least connect to the face once, and that's another big draw. Astro might get there.
Shifts in his chair, too.
He just might. Still looking for Wind Fury, though.
Oh, boy.
And there it is. Nothing stopping the Flappy Bird.
More health looks good to me. But, yeah,
you want to be able to cold-blood it. You want to be able to cold-blood it, right? You want to make sure that if Cold Blood is there, you can at least use it on the Fledgling.
And now, this is still a bit of a tough one. If I'm in Astro spot, I am killing this Prophet Velen. However,
but
it's very difficult for Ike to play Shadow Reaper into it if he just literally has the Velen on board.
Yes.
He will, but if I'm in Astro spot, I'm trading off this Velen. Velen is scary.
The problem is that if you don't kill Velen and Shadow Reaper is there, the Shadow Reaper ends up pinging the Fledgling after trading into it with the Velen, so it's probably just correct to kill.
Now, not killing the Velen does have some merit here. There's no Mind Blast.
Sure.
In Ike's deck.
But it's extremely risky in the event of a Shadow Reaper end-to-win, because now you actually lose the board and the game. You lose the board and the game to Shadow Reaper Anduin. We have to see what Ike drew in this spot. That is dangerous, and that is the Shadow Reaper.
Are you kidding?
Astrogation.
The huge draw from Ike. He destroys the rest of the board.
That right there is game ending. Well, you know, Shadow Reaper just does what it's got to do. You ever heard of a twisting nether that kills you? Oh, wait. Okay, don't wait.
Hey, that's a card draw. I'll take that.
Okay, I'll take a 4/4 with Wind Fury. We're not done. We're not done here. Well, we're almost done, but we're not quite done. Please, there's a Stormwatcher left. Sure, he can go face with the pings constantly.
There's about to be no Astrogation left.
I'm sorry. I tried that.
Well, it doesn't have taunt.
You realize you can ignore it? Well, it's okay. I mean, he still wins, but fair enough. Am I bottom riding buddy is what Astrogation's asking himself. Oh, we're going full 10 mana potion.
Well played.
I'm pretty sure I just had lethal that turn.
There's a very good chance, I think, with the 1 mana potion that he just connected to face.
Either way, Ike exhausts the resources from Astrogation, and a huge pickup from Shadow Reaper Anduin lands him the board.
And, I mean, honestly, after the Cobalt Scalebane buffed the Fledgling, the Shadow Reaper was killing everything, so trading into Velen did not matter after that point. But the Shadow Reaper was the one draw that salvaged that board.
Yeah, it needed to be Shadow Reaper.
Or bust.
And Ike is good at Hearthstone.
He is. That's Hearthstone.
No, it's unfortunate for Astro. I really do respect Astrogation very highly as a player. He's been in the scene for a very long time. He's an absolute grinder, a really nice guy. And it's just unfortunate that his tournament road ends again at the top 16 before he gets a chance to really show the world what he can do.
I think the big thing to look at here too is that you cannot defeat Ike with his own card, Cobalt Scalebane. It's
that
impossible.
is Ike's soul card. We are decreeing it here. Seriously, 10-0. A perfect record, undefeated, going into the single elimination top 16 as first seed. Sometimes can be a curse. For Zalay at Montreal, it was a curse. He got knocked out right away. But for Ike, no dice. He is on a tear, and he's not going down anytime soon. That's only the first of our quarterfinals for today. We've got another one coming up. It's going to be Muzzy versus Zifo, so don't go anywhere, guys. 3 more top 16 matches. DreamHack Denver.